Well, whoever that guy was, he obviously didn't look at the rest of your videos when you're talking behind the camera like you are now. Because you're as white as fucking moon in a bright day, man. We all are.
Let me see if we're up and live. It yes, we
Here,
are.
Mm-hmm.
I found.
Well,
Unmute, huh?
whoever that guy was, he obviously didn't look at the rest of your videos when you're talking. Guess I got that live, huh?
Make sure y'all mute them. Make sure y'all mute them on your end.
Moon in a bright day, man. We all are.
Let's see if we're up and live. It
There we go. I think I got it figured out.
right on. So give it a minute and see if anybody actually starts watching. It's been so long since we did one.
Yep.
Might not be nobody want to jump in.
We'll have a three-way conversation here then, I guess.
I did just a few minutes ago post a community message stating I was going to be on the stream with y'all.
And we got five. We got five on, so that's all good. Like I said, I'm not gonna. We won't wait too awful long for everybody to get here. Let me make sure that it's working at the other places.
Wow, Russ is from Alaska.
All right.
Bet it's cold there already.
Well, I don't know if it's up on X or not. If not, oh well. All right, let's see. I'm gonna let everybody kind of start trickling in. Got 12 over there. All right. So I don't want to have to repeat myself. So let's give it just another minute or so.
Tick, where'd you get that hat? I like it.
That was a Christmas present from my son.
Is it like a race car? Stock car?
It's official Ricky Bobby.
Yeah. Cool.
Right. He got himself one of the Old Spice hats for Cal Naughton.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right. It says there's 15. Woohoo! Giant crowd. So because we all got jobs and lives and stuff to do, and we can't be on till the wee hours of the morning like all the cool kids. We'll go ahead and get started. Everybody else can just catch up. You'll have to excuse me. After going for my ruck this afternoon, my allergies are freaking going
It's
bonkers.
that time of the year.
It is.
Oh my God.
Wife was great about it earlier.
All right. Yeah. Don't enjoy it. We're going to have a discussion about rain gear and wet weather gear and kind of relate it to things that you might see on other channels on the great YouTubes that either don't ever bother to give you context or don't really actually think through what they're saying or haven't ever actually tried and used what they're advocating or have tried it and used it in a completely different environment. Mr. Gibson, good evening, sir. Jay Gibson's a very good instructor, if y'all didn't know. So obviously I'll do like I always do and set the table for the context side of things. For us, obviously, armed prepared citizens, not military, not in a military context, not in a military operation type situation, none of that. We're talking about using wet weather gear and rain gear as unprepared citizens in a catastrophic situation. And it might be if you are trying to get home from wherever you're at, say you're at work, crap goes south, and you need to get back to your house. Maybe you're unlucky enough that you have to leave your house and bug the heck out of Dodge, but you actually have somewhere to go to. Because if you ain't got nowhere to go to, you might not want to be thinking about bugging out, even
You
if it's
become a
bad.
refugee.
But that's another video. Yeah, that's a video for a whole nother topic. So we're going to assume for this context that you've got somewhere to go to and you're trying to get there, or you are already at your bug out location, whether it's somewhere separate from where you live or your bug out location is your home in your subdivision, whatever, and you are having to do the things that you got to do to properly secure your place. So under those conditions, and it can vary from situation to situation, but that's the general context for what we're talking about. Now, everybody likes to throw out blanket statements, and I'm going to get my speech out of the way, and then I'll turn it over to the two smart guys here and let them actually educate y'all. But people like to throw out stuff about rain gear, and it's so blanket that it's dangerous. I mean, it really is. Because how and why and when you use what kind of rain gear, wet weather gear, etc., can vary greatly based on where you're at, what you're doing, what time of year it is, etc. So, for example, down here in the deep south, middle to southern Alabama, um, middle to southern Georgia, Florida, all these places where 8, 9 months out of the year, it's hot and humid and hot. During the hot months, spoiler alert, rain gear is stupid. Because if you try to put on rain gear to stay dry down here in the summer, you're going to be wet. The difference is you're going to be wet with salty, oily, sticky sweat instead of wet with fresh, clean water. That's why you focus on having clothing that dries out quickly and doesn't hold moisture, aka skip the cotton at all costs, and just get wet. For some reason, that's like people have this aversion to being in the rain and getting wet, and I don't understand what it is. We're not talking about from a avoiding hypothermia situation. We're just talking about people just don't like to get wet. They don't mind taking a shower. They don't mind going swimming in a pool, but they don't like to get wet in the rain. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense. First thing you need to be doing, if you're going to find yourself out in the weather on foot, make sure everything in your backpack and in your gear is waterproofed, i.e., in some kind of waterproof bag, and it can be something as simple as a Ziploc bag. I know in basic training, both of my cargo pockets on my pants had Ziploc baggies in them with all of our pertinent stuff in said Ziploc baggies. That was our waterproofing, and it worked great because we got monsooned on. Have your stuff in waterproof bags. I don't have them handy. Maybe I do. Nope, it's buried in the bottom. You can get some decent plastic bags to put stuff in of various sizes right off of Amazon for stupid cheap. Waterproof the crap in your bag, and or also get a waterproof rain cover to go over your pack. Keep the stuff in your pack dry. Your skin is waterproof, 100% non-permeable. It is better than Gore-Tex. It only lets stuff out. It doesn't let stuff in. Get used to getting wet. Now, part of the problem comes in still in the summertime here of everybody likes to advocate having the world famous great USGI poncho. because it's a multi-use item and we can use it to wear to stay dry. We can set up shelter with it. We can wrap a ruck in it. We can do all this stuff with a poncho. Well, if it's pouring down rain and I put my poncho on to stay dry, first off, we already covered summertime, you ain't going to be dry anyway. But that aside, if I've got the poncho on and it's raining, how am I going to set the poncho up as a shelter? Because as soon as I take it off to try to set it up as a shelter, I'm going to get soaking wet, which is why I had it on in the first place, to apparently try to avoid that. You can't do both with it. You're either going to use it as a shelter or you're going to wear it. Trying to do both doesn't make a whole lot of sense to my simple brain. In addition, with a poncho, I know these are all great, but have you ever actually worn a poncho with any kind of gear, particularly any kind of fighting gear, and actually done anything with it in the rain? Spoiler alert, it don't work. It's very clumsy and cumbersome. It's very aggravating. And I can tell you from having done it, it's annoying and aggravating. But one of the most hilarious things in my life was to be helping teach a class one time, and it come up a monsoon rain. And by monsoon, I mean it was a wall of water coming down. And me and a couple other guys just stood there getting soaked because it was like 90 degrees. But many, many people in the class were very well prepared and they had brought their poncho with them. Well, we kept the class going irregardless of the rain. And yes, I know irregardless is not a word. I don't care. And everybody threw their poncho on and then found out real quick that they couldn't put their gear back on over the poncho because it just didn't work. It was all bunched up all kind of crazy ways and just didn't fit. So then they tried running the gear under the ponchos. And then they found out that trying to get your arm under the poncho to a mag pouch to get a mag out and back out and around and up to the wait, that's in the way. I can't get it in the mag well because the poncho's in the way. And now I'm trying to get that. It was one of the funniest things ever to watch these people stumble and fumble and do this. And sometimes you just have to let people learn via experience. So if you're going to get a poncho, my recommendation is something like a snug pack poncho. I'm still not a big fan of them, but the difference in the snug pack versus the USGI is it actually has sleeves. It won't make into a tarp in a shelter, but it actually has sleeves, so you can put your gear on over it and still access it and have the sleeves and everything doing what it's supposed to do. However, you do lose the ability to put it over your ruck, which it's partly designed to do. There's plenty of extra room for it to go over a ruck, but we already covered that. You should have your ruck and everything in it already waterproof to begin with. So what I prefer to do, and this is just me, the other guys can speak for themselves, and I know I'm going on, but I told you I'm going to get mine out of the way and then they can talk. If I'm going to stay dry, it's usually going to be because it's in cooler weather and I'm concerned about hypothermia. At that point, I want to still be able to be mobile. I still want to stay dry, and I still want to stay dry even if I'm setting up a shelter. Hence why I'd have a tarp or a tent or something like that to set up a shelter and then a separate rain layer to wear. Oh my God, yes, it's extra stuff to carry. It sucks. Exactly. That's why none of us really ever want to actually have to do this for real. If it's colder weather, I actually prefer the good old USGI
right?
Equix. Yeah. The old Equix. I love my Equix because it keeps me dry, keeps the wind off of me, keeps me plenty warm, and I can layer as needed underneath it, especially if I'm stationary and not moving. If I'm moving, even if it's cold, Equix usually don't work because I start getting too overheated too fast. However, a simple rain jacket. Now, this one is a older, proper raincoat that's the equivalent of the USGI level 6 hard shell. I like that and a pair of pants. That way, if I just want to put the top on, I can. If I want to put the pants on, I can. It gives me options and versatility. It doesn't take up a lot of space. It's not overly heavy. The other thing that I prefer in any kind of raincoat is the ability to stow the hood in the collar, because I don't like using a hood unless I absolutely have to. I much rather prefer to have a waterproof boonie hat that will keep the rain off my head and off my shoulders and not go down my neck, but it keeps everything open so that I can actually hear what's going on and my sound is not tunneled so that I got to do this everywhere to try to hear stuff. With the boonie hat on, I can still hear everything around me. I'll expand on some more stuff later, but we're going to save the best for last. But Noel, you go ahead and throw your 2 cents worth in there.
Speaking from personal experience, as far as rain gear goes, and I don't know if the prepared citizen is going to actually be in a situation like this, or prepared citizen, but just keep in mind, when I was in the field and it rained for days on end and I had Gore-Tex on, the Gore-Tex would leak after a while. I don't know if you guys had that experience. So I do have some old Gore-Tex. I went with just the, back in the day, it was the kind of a rubber plasticky suit. It never leaked.
The old PVC suit. I had one of those too.
So now I have the Woodland. This one right here, and if you like some of the old stuff, this one that I have, all right, got the hood, all this, all right. I got this from eBay. The date on it is April 2004. It's 20 years old, still in the box, or not in the box, but in the bag. The problem is that when you get it, the tape rots off. I accepted that. Okay, so what I did was to overcome that, because this is not something I'm going to go on a date with my wife on. You know what I'm saying? All right. So what I did is I took some that Flex Seal and I sprayed it on some cardboard. I took an old paintbrush and I just sealed the whole thing, every seam. And I did that, and I got a pair of the pants too. If you have the top, you should have the pants. All right. And so now I've got, a Woodland camouflage pants and a top. I do have the winter Gore-Tex that is decent for winter because it breathes a little bit. But if you get in a rainstorm, you better be putting the actual rain gear on. Let's see. There was something else I was going to say. The problem is that when you get the old stuff and you have it like in your pack and it's summer, all right, which, sometimes I take it if it's starting to cool off. Sometimes that old plastic, the rubber, will start to kind of deteriorate. Now, if you're on patrol, okay, and you're going along and it's cool, but if you're on patrol, you're just wearing like a shirt and pants and driving on because you're generating heat. What I have found is that if you stop, you're in a ORP or longer halt. If you have that on the outside pocket, just take it and put it all the way around you. Get it big enough and just put it over everything, because you're in a short halt, and then you sort it out. You're ready to go, or a longer halt. You sort things out. You're ready to go. Wide it up, put it in that pocket, and move on. If it gets down around, John, you're right. And if when it's hot, it's nasty. Okay, you put that on. But when it gets down about 60 degrees and it starts raining, things change real quick. So I would always carry, at least a top. In the winter, I would carry a top and a bottom. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. Ponchos, I basically use them as a tarp. I would not walk through the woods with a poncho, especially where we've been walking through the woods in, John. You ain't going to get too far. Or you're going to rip up that poncho. They don't have those thick ones like they used to. They're the thin ones. So, yep. The other thing is, one more thing before I shut my mouth here. I have, in my experience, these rain jackets, whatever camouflage pattern you have, they're all the same. If you use this and it has the buttons to button in a field jacket liner, that's the warmest combination I've ever had. I mean, it really is. So in the winter, if you stop on a short hold or a long hold, or you're an ORP for a while or whatever, you're going to put that whole thing over you.
Yeah, and that's all where, like I was saying earlier, it drives me batty when people don't give context about anything or caveats, because like you pointed out, there's a huge difference between doing this in warmer, hotter weather and cooler weather. Even like up in the mountains, like you could be in, and since we're on the East Coast, let's just say anywhere in the Blue Ridge Mountains, from North Georgia all the way up, Pennsylvania, all the way up north and everywhere in between. You could end up at a lower altitude where it's hot enough that you're just going to sweat to death if you put it on. And if you're moving, you might end up going up high enough where the temperature drops 20 plus degrees.
Absolutely.
And suddenly it's a whole different ball game. So it's not just a one size fits all. You've got to take climate and terrain into consideration when it comes to staying dry. And part of staying dry too goes back to what I said earlier. Your regular clothes that you're wearing, all from your underwear and t-shirts all the way up to whatever outer shirt and pants you want to wear. Like, I don't care what the climate is, try to stay away from 100% cotton, because you start sweating or get otherwise wet in it. You want stuff that's going to dry quickly. You want it to dry quickly in the summer to keep you cooler and don't chafe the crap out of you. You want it to dry quicker in the winter so that you don't freaking get hypothermia and freeze to death. So fast drying stuff is always a thing, and you've got to moderate. Again, sometimes you just got to be a little bit wet while you're moving because you're generating heat, and then focus on getting dry whenever you stop and lay up for the night, or
That's right.
whatever.
And I want can I say one more thing? So, like, I want to cover boots, and this is personal experience too. I don't know if you guys know of this stuff, Snow Seal. I may be backwards on the camera, but Snow Seal, you can get it on Amazon. It's like a paste. It's like beeswax. You take it, put it on a rag. If it's for leather boots, okay? So you put it on the leather, all right? And then just take a blow dryer, put it on relatively hot heat, and it will just melt right into your boot. I have been out in serious rainstorms and with leather boots, and my feet were dry. So does it cut down on some breathability? It does, but so does Gore-Tex in your boots. So I believe in this stuff.
Yeah, well, and that you bring up a good point real quick before I turn it over to Dick, because I know he's got some bombs to drop. Your boots and your footwear are a big part of your wet weather gear, because you've got to get the right boots for the environment and terrain. And again, we're not talking about hiking the Appalachian Trail for fun. We're not talking about walking from your car into work and back to the house or whatever. We're talking about being out in the world, having to do this stuff for real. Down in the deep south in the summertime, you will not find me with a pair of boots on my feet that are not vented. Because if it rains, I don't care what you've got on, short of a full jacket and pants, rain suit and pants that come completely down over your boots, you will get water in your boots. And the thing that makes waterproof boots great at keeping the water out also does a great job of keeping the
It
water
does.
in. I had really, really good, a lot of you young kids won't remember this, but way back in the day, our black GI combat boots that we used to get issued, when you put a layer of that snow seal on there, those suckers were waterproof all the way up to the freaking top of the boot. But if you ever went anything over the top of that boot, the water that got in it was going to be there,
Yep.
and it was going to be
It
there
will.
for a
It
week
will.
or so. You weren't getting it out and getting it dry. Ventilated boots that let the water go out that's going to get in are a must. If you're in colder temperatures or have got where you can completely cover and keep it from getting in, waterproof boots make a lot of sense. Keep your feet as dry as you can. But it's not as simple as just saying, oh, I'm just going to have waterproof boots all year long. You can put your waterproof boots on and come down here with me in the summer, and you're going to regret it because we can be out for a day, and if it monsoons on us, which it's a 90% chance it will at some point, you're going to be walking around with buckets of water on
I
your
wouldn't
feet.
put this on your jungle
And
boots.
I can tell you from experience, it does things to your feet that are not pleasant. Especially when you've had those boots full of water on for about 7 days, and you finally get back to the barracks and take them off, and your feet are lovely shades of yellow and orange and green. It'll put the fear of God in you. So, Life Fighters Anonymous making a good point there. Yeah, you got to pay attention to the environment and everything of whether you want dry boots, vented boots, whatever. And I'm fixing to turn it over to Dick so he can blow everybody's minds. But the resident Californian wants to make jokes, and I'm sorry. There's no amount of mild humidity and mild rain that makes up for the rampant communism. I'm just saying. um, all right, cousin, it's
All
all
right, here we go.
yours.
All right. Well, I'm gonna first off, I want to give a shout out to Light Fighters Anonymous. If y'all ain't visited their channel, they're doing some good work over there. Y'all ought to check it out.
Yes.
Now
Yes.
I'm going to circle back to the beginning when John was doing his opening routine there and talk about the ruck. Okay, the rain cover is obviously a valuable accessory, but even a rain cover ain't 100%. So to reinforce what John was saying, y'all ought to make sure that everything in the bag is inside a bag. There's they got those expensive dry sacks with the twist closure, all that, but
Yep.
you can make do with, like you were saying, a Ziploc bag will work just fine. I'm a big fan of them space bags.
I managed to get one out.
Space bags are
So,
it's a self-sealing compression sack. They're used for storing clothes. When you're putting away your winter clothes for the summer, you put them in a space bag and crush it all up, squeeze all the damn air out of it, makes it smaller. It's also watertight.
So these are the ones that you turned me on to, Dick, that I got like a couple of packs of, and they got all different sizes from small ones up to like great big ones. Like you said, it's got a one-way S-type valve on the bottom, and when you seal them up, even if you lose the handy dandy little zipper doohickey, you can still seal it up by hand. But then the air that's in it, you can fold it up and simply press it all out. And then once you press it all out, it sucks back onto itself and seals up and is watertight. I've been using the crap out of these, hence why this one's all wrinkled up. And they're actually, for what they are, they're pretty doggone durable.
So you ought to keep your socks in there. And And
Undies.
something that some folks don't think of, and you ought to have a dry hanky towel somewhere in a Ziploc bag. Y'all got no idea how big a morale boost it is to be able to dry yourself off with a nice soft towel after you've been snorkeling all damn day. So try that. Now I'm gonna cover some stuff that it ain't necessarily about rain gear, because we all know we're from different parts of the country. So your choice of rain gear ain't going to be my choice of rain gear. John likes to get soggy. I live up in the damn mountains where if I do that, I'll get hypothermia. So there,
Difference.
y'all got to make the decisions about what you're going to do with your boots, your rain gear, based on your local climate and what time of the year it is, obviously. So I got some different points that I wanted to come across with pertaining to wet weather operations. Now, you know that I'm not I ain't a beard polishing, flannel wearing poor shamer. So any of the suggestions I make ain't about brand names. It's do what you can with what you got forever and always. So take it for what it's worth. Now, I'm going to start off talking about your LBE or your chest rig. A lot of folks, like John was saying, they don't consider what their fighting load is going to do in the rain. First off, it fits different over rain gear. Shoulder straps take a little bit of effort to adjust, and you don't want to do that, hokey pokey dance of adjusting, trying it on, seeing if it fits, taking it off, adjusting it some more. I mark my straps with a Sharpie for what I call fat and skinny adjustments. So if I'm wearing a coat, I let the straps out to the fat adjustment. If I'm going with just a shirt, I take them in to the skinny adjustment. Just an idea. Now, if it's an expedient, the rain comes out of nowhere, you're probably not going to change the way the straps are adjusted. So what's that mean? Now your rig sits a little higher. Get used to that. And if you're a feller what's got all kinds of nerd gadgets on your chest rig that you think you're going to need while you're partying, get used to it being right up under your meat beak.
By the way, sorry, interruption time, and it's a
It's all
pet
right.
peeve
I
of
need a
mine.
drink anyway.
It's a chest rig.
Yeah.
Your chest is from about here to here. Down here, where my belly button and guts at below my rib cage, ain't my chest.
Yeah. So if you're throwing your chest rig on over rain gear, it's gonna be up in here. Get used to operating like that. Practice with that. Now, if you're a battle belt dude who uses an inner belt to keep your stuff from sliding and twisting, and you got to move the belt outside the rain gear, you got to get inventive about how you plan to keep it straight. Some of them padded belts got a textured rubber surface on the body side to help with this, but it ain't like pickle tugger infantryman proof. The fact is the rubber sticks a little better to rubberized rain gear like a poncho, but I'm just saying, test your setup thoroughly. I guarantee you're going to discover that the moving you do in your yard or in the woods while you're putting your gear through its paces don't really come close to the kind of moving you're going to do when you're faced with the real world threat of party favors zipping through the tree you mistook for cover. And the guy behind you or next to you is laying in the mud, squealing like a train whistle, doing his best impression of a Guar concert, spewing blood all over the place. You're going to discover a level of acrobatic talents previously thought impossible. Now, The other thing to think about is how do your closures behave when they're soaking wet or covered in mud? Can your wet hands still retrieve party favors? Does that change if you got gloves on? The fingers inside the glove might be dry, but the outside of the glove is going to be just as wet as the closure mechanism you're trying to manipulate. So think about that. And I know it's hard to simulate this, and nobody really wants to go out in the rain and drill. I get it. Even Seattle Antifa, I think, stays indoors and postpones their Bolshevik picnics when it's raining. So and maybe make a game out of it. Get your kids to throw water balloons at you and hose you down with a super soaker while you're shadow boxing with your mag pouches, trying to find your dump pouch in its new orientation because it's riding all the way up here. Your raincoat keeps trying to get in your way, so get used to it. That's all I'm saying. Are you one of them iPro weirdos? Guess what you're going to rapidly change your mind about when it's pouring rain?
Yeah.
Are you one of them who needs iron sights weirdos? Guess what you're going to change your mind about when your glass is all covered with raindrops? Are you a budget night vision guy? Again, I'm not a poor shamer. Do what you got to do. But just make sure you ain't counting on your cheap digital nods surviving a downpour. Have a plan B for low light engagements.
Yep.
And that's all I got.
Yeah, I mean, all good points, of course. I mean, I just I see so much stuff that, and I don't see a whole lot. It's just what I do see drives me nuts when people start talking about doing stuff in wet weather, and they just don't give any consideration. They just copy what people throw out there. You see guys that, oh, here's my bug out bag, and I want to carry as little as possible because I want to be as absolutely miserable and low function as possible. So I've got just a tarp, or I mean, not a tarp, just a poncho. And the poncho is going to keep everything dry all the time in every situation. Feet, pack, gear, self, body, sleeping, blah, blah, blah. Things like you just said. The not and the rain is appropriate, obviously, but down here where we're at, Noel has to wear glasses to see stuff good with. A couple of weekends ago, it wasn't raining.
Might as well have been.
But might as well been, because it was literally coming off of us in streams. We were doing a little patrolling and literally had to stop and take a security halt like every 2 or 3 minutes to drink water, because we just about couldn't put it back in us fast enough. And every time we're drinking, I'm looking back, and Noel's back there doing this number to the glasses, trying to find a dry place to wipe them off. Everybody thinks they're going to walk around out in the woods patrolling with iPro on. I hate to tell you guys, it ain't square range. What you're doing is already dangerous by nature. You can't be so risk averse that you end up getting yourself killed because you couldn't see the guy hiding in the bushes because you've got freaking buckets of sweat running across your glasses. By the way, back to what I said earlier, that that sweat stuff, when it runs across your glasses, it's got salt and body oils and stuff like that in it. And it ain't just super easy to wipe off. It can make everything all smeared and smudgy and blurry and attract dirt and stuff. So having things over your eyes to catch liquid, whether it's sweat, rain, whatever, is not going to be conducive to you actually being able to see stuff. It's guys like Noel that have to wear the glasses. It's something they've got to take into consideration. And obviously have to deal with because, they can't not go without them. But if you don't have to have them, then it's probably a good idea to start getting used to, you know, doing
Yeah.
stuff without
So,
them.
and being a guy that does wear glasses, I mean, I won't go outside if I think it's going to rain without a build cap, the jungle caps that we have. And I usually keep something dry, like one of those little like silk, um, uh, the glass washers, But the problem is that if you got glasses and it's that wet, it's just gonna get wet. I mean, just smearing stuff. So, but another thing with the glasses is that we had camo paint on. Camo paint gets on your glasses. It'll get on your eye pro.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something you have to overcome. Just you have to figure out what works for you and kind of overcome it. So.
I wanted to go back and touch on something like Fighters Anonymous said earlier in the chat, talking about having a hood over your head on any kind of rain gear. It's going to affect your hearing. It's going to affect situational awareness, especially with the sound of raindrops bouncing off it. You're not going to be able to hear a damn thing out in the woods. So you may consider something like what Noel was saying, a wide brim hat instead of a hood to keep your head covered.
And with that, like John showed that one he had that the hood goes into the collar. These have those tabs. All you got to do is roll it down, and it stays down out of the way. And that is a must. You have to have that.
And if you have a rain jacket that doesn't have that feature on it, simply take the hood and fold it down flat inside the back of the jacket, and then pull it up tight around you.
Even if it's not raining, just you moving the head a little bit, that makes that noise.
It affects just moving your head. It affects it could be a light misty rain where it's not making noise, but you still get the tunnel effect of your hearing. Stuff behind you and to the sides gets rapidly degraded. Add in, like Dick pointed out, the sound of raindrops beating on it. It's loud enough with the rain just falling on its own. You start adding in it hitting right on top of things that's pounding in your ears, it's even worse, and it does more than just degrade your hearing. It screws with a lot of your senses in various ways.
And you're gonna drive yourself mad with the sound of Gore-Tex rubbing up against itself while you're moving through the bush. So consider all these things before you just act.
And again,
it's gonna work.
And just to keep it in front of people's minds, this applies to if you're just, let's say you were able to get your freaking subdivision organized and sealed off, and y'all are pulling the good security and taking turns, and even just around your subdivision, moving around and doing stuff, you need to be able to hear. You've got to be able to hear what's going on, because it might be somebody calling out, you got zombies in the wire and, coming in at some particular part of where you've got things secured. You need to be able to hear that kind of stuff. It's
electric ear pro with the amplified microphones in it. In a rainstorm, you're just gonna sound like you're in a parade. But
so most of what I've seen out there that claims to be waterproof electronic ear pro really ends up not being after a good rain. But on the rare occasion that it is, you're still amplifying all that rain noise and can't hear crap. Additionally, and I'm going to go off in the weeds a little bit on this, but since we brought it up and talking about it, guys, get it out of your head that you're going to be walking around in the end of the world wearing electronic ear pro. I know on the surface it sounds great, and I know running around in a day class out there it sounds great, but do you even have a way to keep those batteries charged long term? Do you even have rechargeable batteries for it for long term? Secondly, what most people tend to forget about is that when they go take their classes, and it's great for that. I have it and use it myself for that. But in between drills or when you're taking breaks, you're taking them off. Put those things on and wear them in 95-degree weather for 8 or 10 hours and get back to me and let me know how your head feels. You do not realize how
I
much
think
heat it's
I think
retaining
with
in there.
that, one of the problems that has come up is that guys would use those in combination with the high cut helmets, but they would use them in more of a CQB type environment, like a SWAT team, a short duration, and
Yeah, kick it indoors.
then it spilled over into the field, And come on, guys,
Yep.
it's different. If you want to use it for short duration, you're going to hit a house, you're going to do something like that. Fine, but then you're not going to go on a long patrol with those. It's not going to work. It's not. And to be quite honest with you, I would rather have a helmet, not the high cut helmet, but the lower helmet that gives me more protection, because that Ear Pro is not going to give you any. I mean, if you think about it, we're not going to be, we're not going to have indirect fire probably put on this, but if you're a real soldier and they're shooting mortars at you, all right, I want to at least have my ears protected more than a piece of plastic that's,
Yeah.
Right, and that's
one of the things
like I
that
said,
it ain't exclusive to the civilian community. Even folks in the general military, they like to copycat the fellers that are the tier 1 tip of the spear, professional door kickers. So they see them doing it, they figure, well, if it's good for us.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you watch the videos that we we have the B's on and everything else, I mean, it's purposely made for what we are doing, Yep.
Static security, where I ain't moving around, or if I'm driving in a vehicle and I want to mount nods or whatever. Other than that, the young bucks can do it all they want to, but at my age and with my neck problems and so on and so forth, my days of putting freaking 3 or 4, 5, 6 pounds of weight on top of my head and toting it around all day long are long gone.
John,
I ain't doing it.
You and I, and Ben that was with us, we may not be, decathloners, but we're in decent shape. And, I'll take any of those young bucks and take them out there in the woods where we were, when we're drinking, air, and they'll see that you better get out from that keyboard and you better go out there and do it. So.
Yeah, let me say this last thing so I can get off the beating the dead horse. Electronic Ear Pro sucks in a real world environment because you have no sense of direction of sound. It takes away what your ears naturally do of you being able to locate the direction a sound is coming from, and it just amplifies everything into your ear. It makes it very difficult to tell where a sound is coming from. If you can't figure out why that might be a bad thing, I don't know what to tell you. Yes, it gunfire sucks. Yes, there's a chance it's going to dramatically affect your hearing. But it's that, or like walk into an ambush you didn't hear because you couldn't figure out where the sound is coming from, which is probably a little bit more long lasting. And I'll take a live with tinnitus because I already got the tinnitus, so is what it is. But going back, sticking to the topic at hand, though, the rain part, Electronic Ear Pro don't work in the rain for you being able to hear what the heck's going on around you, because it just overloads everything.
Yeah.
Um, so once again, uh, Light Fighter Anonymous makes the point that I have been doing for years and still do. Keep earplugs in a case
Yeah.
somewhere on me, and when the party favors start flying, regardless of where it's at, um, I take care of business while it's time to take care of business, and then the first opportunity that I get, I can pop those in real quick. And yes, guys, it doesn't take but a second. Some people make out that it takes like a 30-minute ordeal to shove earplugs in your ear. If it takes you 30 minutes or any kind of length of time, put earplugs in your ear, you're doing something wrong. I hate to be the one to tell you, but it's not that big of a deal to pop them in when you get a chance. First thing you do is handle the problem, but you'll probably get those chances because, oh, I don't know, maybe if you're smart and you don't try to fight standing in the open and you actually utilize this thing called cover and concealment that either A, stops bullets from hitting you, or B, at least makes it hard for the bad guys to know where you're at to shoot you. It gives you this thing called time. And you can use that time to do all kind of things like pop earplugs in, reload, figure out where you're going to move to so you don't just stay there in that one spot. We don't stand perfectly still and fight in the open. Again, digress. Y'all get me off into the weeds
One
on
thing
these other
that
things.
most
But
people don't also take in consideration, this kind of goes to what Dick was saying. Um, and I know that you do this really well, John, is figure out some type of a waterproof bag or how to waterproof your radio. People, you know, if you can't talk because your radio is dead.
it goes
So,
back. It goes back to waterproofing all your
yeah,
gear and equipment. And people do not make enough use of simple, good, strong
yeah,
Ziploc baggies. They can be used for all kind of things, and a box of them is cheap, so that once one becomes unserviceable, you chunk it and you
yeah.
grab another one. You do not have to spend a fortune trying to waterproof things
But
like
you
your
need to spend the
radio.
time to do it.
A radio in a Ziploc
Most people
bag.
don't.
Yeah,
I've done it before, but I'm gonna have to do another specific video
Yeah.
on that. I showed it in a previous one, but I guess I'm gonna have to do another one. And I got hate mail for the last time I did it, but I'm gonna do it again anyway because screw them.
yeah. I wanted to touch on
Anyway,
something real quick before I forget about it. We were talking before about being able to do things quick. For instance, the throwing the earplugs in or ditching gear. I wanted to go back to talking about them folks would think that they're gonna just have one big poncho that covers their ruck and everything. You might want to consider about how much more difficult it's going to make it to ditch the ruck in a hurry if you got it
Mhm.
under a poncho that you're using to protect you from the rain. So, yeah, it'll keep your pack dry. It's a great solution to keeping your stuff dry. But decisions like that are going to depend on your expectation for coming in contact with potential party goers. So, if you if you're moving
well,
through hostile terrain or contested city spaces, you don't want to have your ruck on underneath a poncho if you think you might have to shed it in a hurry.
Mhm.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
well, I'll piggyback on that too. Not even shedding it in a hurry. If you've got it underneath the poncho, what happens when you got to stop and take a crap? Newsflash: I can just about guarantee you ain't going to take a crap with your ruck on because it tends to make you a little unbalanced. Not to mention,
I'm
um,
not sure where that came
it can be
from.
a
I
little
came from
bit
left field,
fiddly
John, but
working with the drawers. Um, you 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 ain't gonna squat up against a tree and take a crap with your ruck on. So when you take it off to do that, and you got to get your wet wipes out anyway. Everything's gonna get wet unless you got everything waterproofed in there. So I want to on the wet thing. So I'm not picking on WTT. I just wanted to point this out. Having something like waterproof radio is great, but let me caveat that for you. I do not care how waterproof your radio is supposed to be. Do not, if you are banking your life on that radio, do not trust it. Put it in a bag and a pouch and take measures to protect it. I have a very good friend that was Marine Force Recon. They got the really super fancy waterproof radios. Every waterborne insertion that they did, every one of those radios was in dry bags and secured. Now, they're super waterproof military radios.
Mm-hmm.
They were still waterproofed in dry bags. Do not trust your radio being waterproof. I don't care what the IP rating is on it or how many times you've went swimming with it. A Ziploc bag is too cheap and too easy a protection to chance your life to it, because if we're having to do this stuff for real, God forbid, as armed citizens, that means every single thing we've got with us is vitally
And
important.
not just the radio, but the batteries too, and the hand mic.
Everything. Because that radio, you're probably only going to be working, even again, if it's just your subdivision. And some subdivisions can get pretty big with a lot of people. Some of them are kind of big and spread out. Rural retreat property, whatever. Our place that we've got, it's fairly large and pretty doggone natural, shall we say. And you're likely, being realistic for most people, you're likely only going to have enough personnel to occasionally send out a 2 or 3 man patrol for security reasons around your perimeter, which you should be doing. But with that limited amount of manpower, that radio back to wherever everybody else is at is your lifeline. You have got to make sure that it works and protect it. If you're doing other fancy stuff, even more so, you got to do that. So, having a waterproof radio is great, but just don't trust it. Is all I'm saying. And again, I wasn't picking on what WTT said, just using that as a segue and an example. Again, guys, you got to look at your situation. What's the climate? What's the time of year? What's the terrain? Where are you at? What are you doing? All these things have got to be taken into consideration when you're thinking about wet weather gear. And again, I know military ponchos are great. Everybody loves them and everybody touts them, and every single super YouTuber that you watch has got one in their bug out bag because it's the great bomb diggity. But I'm here to tell you they're fairly limited in real world practical use. And you're probably better off with something else. Somebody says there's lag on my audio. Well, I don't know why there's lag on the audio.
If there is, I ain't seeing it.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds good on my end, but because my connection's 5x5, I can't get it any better. So, hang on a second. Let me see. I want to see what what Jay brings up. That's actually a thing. I know this is something that the Brits do with their windproof smocks that have all the pockets on them. They'll actually put their wet weather layer underneath their smock,
Mm-hmm.
and that way they keep the sound dampening, access to the pockets and all the gear and whatever camo pattern, etc., all on the outside, and the rain layer is underneath that. And at that point, it doesn't matter what the rain layer sounds like, looks like, or anything else. So that's that is something to give some thought to, especially depending on. You could get away with taking a regular smock like that and adding like some spray on DWR or something like that, and it'll actually work for light misty kind of rain. Now, if you get like a heavy downpour, that stuff, in my experience, usually gets soaked through. But I mean, that is an option.
Keep in mind the Scotch Guard
Um,
glows in IR.
yeah, that's a downside to it. Um, remaking the shelter hat. Oh boy, as long as you got a teammate for that to work with, that's a great idea. And somebody could theoretically take new modern materials,
Yeah.
like 70D coated ripstop nylon, and do that. One of the biggest problems with the old shelter halves was that A, they were freaking bulky and heavy as crap, and B, you obviously got to make sure you got a buddy, and then C, they were great in theory and they were better than nothing. But the couple of times that I was out in an actual super downpour with one, the ends of it lacked a little to be desired of keeping rain out. Now, part of that might have something to do with me being 6'1" barefoot. But the old shelter halves, I tended to have a wee bit of exposure on either end. But I mean, if you got teammates, and yes, 8 strong together, then yeah, it's a good idea. DJ brings up a good point. I'm a big fan of 0241 Tacticals tarps because you can get them in a couple of different sizes. They're super lightweight and do all the things that I want them to do, which that and a good bug net.
He also brings up a good point on, well, he got it in parentheses, but I don't know how to exactly say it. A basha. It's a, yeah. I mean, I have one of those. I mean, that thing is like,
yeah, it's
yeah,
a
you can
brick
make a
tarp.
motorboat out of it, for heaven's sakes. I mean, it's got you can string it up, and it gives you a lot of options. And the one I have is extremely lightweight, and it works really well.
What were
I
you
was
going
gonna
to
plug
say?
Coleman Surplus. I buy a lot of crap from them. They often have sales on old surplus French shelter halves, which are better than the American canvas ones we was issued, but they are pretty high quality. If you're looking for a shelter half solution, if you'd rather go that route, the Coleman Surplus sells them pretty cheap. Who says it's got to be American, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much
Whatever
everything.
works.
Pretty much everything on Amazon made in China, anyhow.
Yeah.
And people have got to get over that nonsense. You need to start focusing on getting what works and what you can afford. And just because it's not made in America doesn't mean that it's automatically crap. Because newsflash, made in America today does not mean what it meant in 1945. Made in America today is not the same.
Well, my son's at basic training, and I'm going to ask him if they're still issuing those old canvas shelter halves. I hope they're not, but I don't know. So.
Yep. let's see. We probably don't need to drag on too awful much longer. I just want to see if there's anything else that we
Well, I mean, John, I think this
need
goes
to
into
touch
kind of
on.
what we always preach and always say, get what works, but try it out. Make sure you use the stuff, and make sure it works for you.
Yeah, I mean, get your stuff, make sure it works. Don't be afraid to get something that's not what the cool kids are recommending. If you get it and you can make it work for you, then make it work. There are some good options out there that are sometimes cheap, and if you're not worried about trying to win cool guy points on Instagram, or you're not worried about trying to, be the win the award for the month of greatest virtue
Yeah.
signaler, um, you know, then get what works. I mean, get what works for you, because just because it doesn't work for somebody else doesn't mean it ain't going to work for you.
Yep.
What else? Let me.
I think we covered a lot of ground tonight on the subject.
Yeah. Trying to catch up on some of the comments real quick. And sadly, I don't think we ever actually made it on X, because I didn't because I didn't ever see it pop up over there. So I'll have to look into that and try to get that. Yes, Light Fighters Anonymous is correct again. You're gonna get wet. The trick is figuring out when that's okay and when it's not, i.e., temperature and activity, and then just get good at it. Get get to the point where it doesn't bother you anymore. um, I don't uh, I don't mind getting wet at all. Um,
Well, it's kind of all in context. I talked about the snow seal stuff. That
yeah,
you don't use that when you're in like down at your place, John. But like I know when it gets cooler
yeah,
and then
yeah,
it starts to, you got a little precipitation and you're in a wooded area, you're not crossing streams, you're just out in an area. I mean, I use the living daylights out of it, but it's all
yeah,
it's
yeah.
all dependent on where you are, and you brought up some good points. I mean, if you're in swampy areas, well, you better have something that's going to drain that water out because you're going to get wet anyhow. So, not these,
Jay,
you know, the high speed, super padded boots that have the foam in it that it's going to take 2 months for it to dry, you know. So, just the old jungle boot.
Jay brings up
Yeah.
Jay brings up a good point. Um, Hypothermia is hypothermia. It doesn't matter how well you think you're uh, acclimated to stuff. Um, I've grown up down here my entire life in the heat. I am not immune to heat stroke, heat exhaustion, or anything else. I am not acclimatized to it, even though I've been here my life. Um, my body will still overheat and it will still go hypothermic. It's the same for everyone. And one of the things you got to pay attention to, again, on the wet topic, again, the context and everything, when's it okay to be wet, when's it not? Um, your body temperature doesn't have to drop 20 or 30 degrees for you to be hypothermic. 2 to 3 degrees drop in body temperature and you're hypothermic. Now, how much that affects you can vary, but you're still hypothermic if your body temperature drops a couple of degrees below the average of 98.6 or whatever your normal average is. Um, and other points in the comment, um, wool is great. Um, I use wool socks and stuff all the time. Um, it's a thing. Uh, Both hot and cold weather, wool still work. Um,
Yeah, it's
let's see.
important to recognize there's a theme that keeps recurring in the chat there. Look, crap weather is the great equalizer, right? On the battlefield,
Mm-hmm.
if the weather makes you uncomfortable, it's making your adversary uncomfortable too. So the question then becomes, how tough are you? How much can you handle?
Which one of you can do more in the
Yeah.
uncomfortable
Exactly.
weather? Because that's who's going to come out key. That's why I have no problem being wet. And like for years, my wife and both my sons have just they've gotten used to it now. But for the longest time, if we were at the store or something and it started pouring down rain while we were in the store, everybody's standing there at the doors, congregated up, waiting on it to stop raining before they can go out in the parking lot and get their cars. I would always just walk right past everybody and just walk out to the rain. And the few people that did go, sometimes they're running as fast as they can. And it's like, I hate to tell you people, but you're running into just as many raindrops as you're missing. Um, you ain't no drier than I am just walking, and I'm not nearly as tired as you. And getting wet, it it doesn't matter. I quit caring about being wet a long time ago. I care about my equipment and gear being wet and not working, which is why you take precautions as we talked about for doing that. But if you can get used to being okay with that, um, you will fare a lot better than people who aren't okay with that and don't fare well with it. And some of it's physiological, but there's also a lot of it that's psychological. We people have been modern day people have been programmed from birth that you don't go out in the rain and get wet. You'll catch a cold if you go out and get wet. Um, I know probably everybody here is smart enough to know that, but for those of you that might be watching this and aren't, getting wet does not cause you to catch a cold. A cold is caused by a bacteria, not you being wet. Um, if that was the case, you'd catch a cold every time you freaking got a shower or went swimming or whatever. So put that out of your head. Um, just do away with it. Throw it away. Don't worry about it. But my point with that is people are so programmed in that mindset that they'll literally won't want to go out and do anything whenever it's raining. And you may have bad guys trying to sneak up to your rural homestead, your subdivision, whatever, and it suddenly start raining, and they may completely stop and pitch shelter and sit still and try to stay dry till it stops raining. And if you're okay uh, with getting wet and operating in the rain, you can go out and do stuff in the rain. And while they're sitting there trying to stay dry and wait on the rain to stop, you can take advantage of it because guess what? When it's raining, it's actually a great time to get out and do the things because of all the stuff we previously talked about. The wetter the terrain is, the more it masks your noise. The rain itself falling masks your noise. It also helps mask your scent because that's going to be a thing too, by the way. Um,
Yeah,
you know, being able to do stuff in the rain
I do.
is
I do
advantageous at
recommend
times.
increasing the frequency that you do a sills halt, though, if working
Yeah.
it.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Because the absence of the situational awareness is gonna
it's a two-way
So
street.
you gotta if your adversary is taking the mentality of hunkering down and waiting for the rain to stop, you're going to trip over them before you hear them or see them. So a sills halt ought to happen a little bit more frequently when you're moving in a downpour.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because it is very much a two-way street there. Um, it masks the bad guy sound just as much as it masks yours. So you got to keep that in mind. And sills is where you're going to make your money at, whether it's raining, not raining, or anything else.
Yep.
A good team is going to live and die by its sills and
Or you could just take, the reconnaissance by fire mentality.
well, there is that. There is that.
There's a cluster of bushes up there. It looks suspicious. Let's just pop
Let's
a
just
couple in there.
yeah. Well, I think
and
that from what I've seen on YouTube and everything else, not too many people are talking about seals. You know what I mean? And stop, look, listen, smell.
no,
It's because they all figure they're gonna launch a friggin' one of them little remote control weed whackers up into the air and do
Yeah.
their recon for them.
Yeah, for them. Yeah.
Noel, check your messages. That one just popped up from a certain person. I'll forward to you in a minute, Dick. Might be some stuff going on to pay attention to. So on that note, we've been going for
Yeah.
hour and 16 minutes. I think that's long enough to beat this dead horse silly. So bottom line is, guys, waterproof your equipment and gear. Waterproof everything that's in your equipment and gear. Actually try out your wet weather gear in hot weather, cold weather, in between weather, and be realistic about it. Use the Sharpie trick because it is a thing. And don't, again, y'all hear me all the time, don't just copy what other people on YouTube and everywhere else, social media stuff are saying. I'm telling you that from what we're saying. Don't just copy or take what we're saying. Actually do this stuff for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? You've got to find out what works for you.
I've said it many times that the Amazon has summarily castrated the idea of going out and shopping for gear. All right. So now what happens is everybody does their shopping by listening to some self-proclaimed expert on YouTube telling them what gear is best. And them folks ain't gonna sacrifice their cool points by telling y'all that the cheap or less expensive solution might be just as good as the expensive prestige brand. So you gotta take it with a grain of salt. Try your stuff out. Use what works for you in your environment, not what works for some schmo out in the Pacific Northwest who got his stuff for free and is talking it up like it's the bee's knees.
Yeah.
Just be realistic.
Yep.
Noel, anything else on your end?
I'm good.
Well, who knows? Maybe one night we're gonna have to drag Lap Fighters Anonymous on here and let him not be so anonymous anymore, and he can chime in on a few things as well. I'll reiterate what Dick said earlier. Make sure you go check out his channel. He's got some good stuff over there. The way that I know he's a fairly intelligent grunt is that he likes Crossfire stuff, so that gives him some bonus points right there. Um, y'all know I'm a Crossfire junkie because I had a little bit of input on the DZ rig, and I can take a little bit of credit for the Crossfire CF2 because that was the one that I pounded and begged and pleaded for about a year for them to make. So you're welcome. What else? Anything else before we head out?
Get out from behind the keyboard and go do it. Get out there and do it.
Yep. Even if it's as simple as loading your ruck up, throwing your ruck on, and going for a walk.
Yep.
And if you're worried, if you live in an area that's so bad that you can't put on your real ruck and do it, I pity you because that's just a sad state. But I get it. Some places are like that. Go get a pack. Go get the gaudiest pack you can find at Wally World so nobody freaks out.
I just wear a regular blue
just
pack.
load it up.
Put weight in it and walk around my neighborhood.
Load it up. Put weight in it and go walking.
Go do it.
Like it sounds so simple, but it's so beneficial of what it does for you walking 2 or 3 miles wearing that weight. And it doesn't have to be a lot of weight. It can just be 20 pounds. Work your way up, but it helps you in so many ways because if anything, God forbid, goes truly bad, walking is probably what you're going to be doing the most of, and being able to walk and carry and weight is probably a pretty good beneficial thing. So I know Noel and I both do it. I know Dick still does it. My days of worrying about running anywhere are long over unless I absolutely have to. Because again, the whole young whippersnapper thing. Hate to tell you guys, but Noel's got rebuilt knees. I've got aftermarket parts and rebuilt back, and Dick's got his fair share of stuff. Be careful on those knees and gun bucks because the day is going to come when you may suddenly realize some of the stuff you're doing wasn't all that beneficial and did more harm than good. That's all I'm going to say.
You're only immortal until you ain't no more.
That's right.
All right. We're going to end it here. Appreciate you guys all jumping in. Appreciate all the comments and
good comments.
Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate the input.
Yep. Good y'all comments. Get out there and do it and stay safe, and we'll catch y'all later.
All right.